Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there,
How dare you!
all guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want!
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion
is advised.
You talk about extreme.
If knowledge is a crime, we were guilty from the start. They don't fear the questions, they fear the spark. So we steal the fire, not to rule, not to reign, just to see through smoke and mirrors and call the beast by name. They call it dangerous thinking, they call it heresy. But fire doesn't fear the dark, it only shows what's real.
Doc Brown, welcome to my show on Sean Atwood's channel. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, brother. I appreciate you having me. Is this the maiden voyage, the first one?
No, it's the second.
Okay, Seal, I'm honored. Thank you.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure. And about time, isn't it? Because I've been on your show, so, a couple of times. So I thought it's about time that, I returned the favor. But thank you. Thanks for joining us today. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. The rain has finally let up in the southern United States. It's been a monsoon for like a month, so it's finally starting to ease up a little bit, I hope. You're dealing with the heat wave.
Yeah, we are. And I live on a sheep farm. It's horrific here. I was talking to the farmer's daughter a couple of days ago, and she said that there's no grazing land for the sheep. They're having to buy in food. They do that anyway, but this is going to ramp up the cost of, of what the lamb ultimately will be sold for, and it might put the farmer into a position where it's no longer viable. If people won't pay. And this
Yeah.
is all being driven, in my opinion. I think that this is geoengineering and all part of Agenda 2030, where we now stand a realistic possibility of eating bugs and synthetic meat in the not too distant future.
And be
What do
happy.
you think? Oh, yes, we've got to own nothing and be happy. It's funny you mentioned that, because I was talking to someone earlier on today that said that also applies to everything we have stored on our phones and movies as well, because we've thrown away a lot and sold a lot of DVDs and videos and also our music. So we're not going to own any of that either. And if they turned everything off, then we wouldn't even have a movie to watch.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in hard copies. It's like, the video games, when they went to PS5, everything went digital. I was like, no, I want the hard copy. And books, I love audiobooks, but everybody's doing that. Nobody has any physical copies anymore. So, I keep a nice library of that, and even DVDs. I had a friend come over. We went to a conference together, so he came up from out of state, so he stayed with me, and he's seen my two big towers of my DVD collection. But most of it was all, fringy, conspiracy type stuff. He was like, oh my gosh, this is so nostalgic. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? I watch these all the time. It makes you feel old.
I know exactly what you mean. But old is gold.
Oh yeah,
And
man.
there's so much in the old films as well that we now are only finally starting to realize. I was talking to somebody about Fight Club.
Hmm.
Now, if the people watching this, if you want to go back and watch Fight Club again, if you're looking for something to watch, then all I will say to you is 9/11. It's all there. That film is about 9/11. What is that? It's got to
Oh
be
wow.
25 years old now. So
Hmm.
that, it's all in plain sight, isn't it? Revelation
It
of
usually
method.
is.
Yeah. So for the people that don't know Doc Brown, introduce yourself and tell us where your journey began. How did you end up doing this?
No, man, I appreciate you having me on once again. But yeah, my name's Justin. I kind of got the nickname Doc Brown. I tell people jokingly, I'm from the southern United States, so we're great at our nonsensical nicknames. So we'll name a 7-foot tall guy Tiny. So somebody's seen it fit to name this big dummy Doc, and I just got to be blessed with the last name Brown. So you got the whole Back to the Future reference. So I just embraced it. But no, I was your typical Southern man. They call it the Bible Belt. I grew up in church and stuff my whole life, and was always fascinated with history and fascinated with the Bible, and it just kind of went along and. Never was a big reader though. I mean, I never read anything up until the age of probably 26, 27 that I wasn't made to read, but I got exposed to
Mm.
some of this stuff just through YouTube and things like that. And I honestly went, started going through the Bible and stuff just to kind of prove these guys wrong because I thought they were full of it. And I quickly learned it's like, man, I just thought that I knew this book, so it kind of got me started down the rabbit trail, man. So I started reading stuff from L.A. Marzulli, watching his stuff, Trey Smith, God in a Nutshell, just all these different top people that exposed me to this whole new world, man. And now it's like a fire was lit that could not ever be quenched. I'm always working on 2 or 3 books now, and it kind of just led to me wanting to talk about it. So I had a friend introduce me to podcasting, and 2.5 years later, brought me here. I got my first book under my belt, and just loving what I do, man, living the dream.
Have you found that you've lost friends and members of your family have disconnected with you along the way during your journey?
Oh, 100%. Solomon talked about it, in his books. He said, that wisdom is the beginning of sorrows, and it isolates you. It kind of puts you,
Mm.
in a corner, you know what I mean? Because you're no longer plugged into the system. I seen some guy on Instagram the other day. He looked like the greaser style. He had his hair slicked back in a jacket and stuff. But he had like a British accent and he was smoking. And he's like, Nietzsche said it best, that once your eyes are open, and basically I'm paraphrasing here, but once your eyes have been open and you've been exposed to this world, you realize quickly that you can never be a part of it again. And he said, and you've isolated yourself. He said, and you try to talk to people, they look at you or call you crazy. He said, so then you stop talking. He said, you're still watching. He said, but you are no longer a part of this world. And that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah. I think 2020 caused rifts between people as well. I fell out with friends. I clashed with members of my family, and certain people stopped talking to me because of my views and what I was putting on Facebook. That ultimately led to my account being closed. Although it's restricted again now at the moment, because I'm still like you. I'm still putting information out there that they don't like, and obviously Sean knows all about being restricted. And
Yeah.
it's a problem, isn't it? Because from what from my point of view, all I'm trying to do is share information with people in the hope that they will consider that there are alternatives to the narratives we're provided, and that they're worth considering. And that this information isn't put out there for fun. If I was encouraging someone not to take a medical intervention during 2020, that person could be a complete stranger. It wouldn't directly affect me if they had a repercussion as a direct result of taking it. So why would I go out of my way to help a stranger in return for being ridiculed? And I sometimes wonder if that kind of logic enters some people's minds. But I've come to
Yeah,
the
I think it's kind of
conclusion.
programmed in. You know what I mean? If you go
Mm,
back to Plato and his allegory of the cave, that's kind of can't see it
yes.
that well, but that's what my logo is kind of based off of. That is a cave with a guy standing in there with the light shining through, and
Mm,
I named it Prometheus lens, but that's exactly what it is. It's that story for those that's not familiar. These people are born and raised in this cave. They're chained to this rock, and there's this fire behind them. And these people hold up these little shadow puppets, and these guys that are chained to the rock, that's all they know. That's their reality, and they make bets and gamble, like which shadow figure is going to be first today, or what's the order of it, and that kind of thing. But one
mm,
escapes and sees the deception and goes up to the top. And of course, it's blinding. When you're told something new or you experience something new, it's strange, it's painful, it's uncomfortable. But instead of going back into the cave, he stood there and let his eyes adjust, and he's seen the whole new world. But then he thought of his friends. He's like, I got to tell them. So he goes back and tries to tell them, and they end up murdering him for it. And
yeah.
that's what we're doing basically. We try to wake people up and show them these things, and they either try to murder us or lock us in a cell somewhere.
And we've seen that happen before, haven't we? When Tartaria fell, all of a sudden we had asylums open across the world. and people committed for the most bizarre reasons. One of them under the Lunacy Act was if your husband died in battle, you were considered to be insane. Of
Mm,
course, that then gave them access to the children. The children became property of the state, and they could be redistributed and were shipped,
mm.
all over the world to repopulate and start again. And I sometimes fear that these FEMA camps are actually going to be a potential threat for people that are speaking out against the system, because someone that I speak to quite regularly on a radio show I do on a Thursday evening, he's been arrested for a comment he made on Twitter. He's actually been arrested. He's still waiting to see what's going to happen. He's been in and out of court a few times. Um, it can be quite a dangerous world, can't it? Once you're putting your head above the parapets and exposing some of this information, especially what we're going to be talking about today. The royal and Illuminati bloodlines. I mean, that's
Mm.
that is a very sensitive subject.
Oh yeah, and it puts a crosshair on you because immediately once I started talking about this and announced that I was doing a book, I immediately was getting emails from someone that is in these family bloodlines and was threatening me, threatening to sue me, that I couldn't even reference, their family's work and all this kind of stuff, and ended up hitting me. They come after me on YouTube and try to hit me with copyright strikes just for me discussing some of their family's history that they shared in the public domain. So I ended up having to dispute it, and they ended up, kicking it out or whatever. So no harm, no foul. But yeah, talking about this stuff definitely puts a crosshair on your head and ruffles some feathers for sure.
Do you ever have issues with content being removed?
Not until that event.
That was
I
the
come
only
in late.
time.
I've just been doing this I've been podcasting off and on, as like a hobby since I think 2022, 23. And then I got serious, maybe the last 2.5 years when I started this show. But I guess I come in after, the hard crackdowns, you know what I mean? So
Mm,
that was the only experience that I've had with YouTube and community guidelines and that sort of thing. But it was someone else reporting me.
yeah, yeah. I found that YouTube has certainly become more laxed. We're now allowed to say certain things that we weren't before. Obviously, there are trigger words that we can't, but just seeing David Icke back on YouTube is something that I found quite surprising. But at the same time, Sean was on my channel recently, and I created some shorts that I put onto TikTok, and two
Oh,
of them.
TikTok's awful.
Yeah,
I
that
don't
what
even
has
get on there
happened there?
anymore.
Yeah, that's changed beyond all recognition, hasn't it?
Yeah, I call it commie talk.
Yeah, yeah. The restrictions on there seem to be more severe than Facebook. Whereas
Yeah.
Instagram, that appears to be somewhere you can put anything.
Yeah, it's the Wild West.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I often wonder whether or not there are certain platforms that are dedicated for people like ourselves, so they've got us all in one place, and that way, whether or not there's any truth to this, but I've heard that that's why Musk took over Twitter. So he's got everybody there, all the people that are speaking out, that are not following the mainstream narratives, that are, saying certain things that you're not allowed to say. They're all on one platform, and
Mm.
they're all being monitored.
Oh yeah, I agree. And they talk about the controlled opposition. They'll say, "Oh,
Ugh.
this is where you guys can gather and you can talk," but really it's
Mm,
there so they can have you, like you said, in one spot and kind of observe you and see who the real problems are, who the real cogs in the wheel are. You know.
mm. We're kind of at a point there where I all the time I'm hearing people being referred to as controlled opposition. And it just seems like a very easy thing to say. You can just come out with that, with their controlled opposition. Where does this information come from? You know, who's controlling them? Where can this be substantiated? Even myself, I've been told that I'm controlled opposition. But if people go
Mm-hmm.
onto Google and type in my name, they're on Google Images in particular, they'll see that for years I was a tattoo artist. I mean, I was hardly doing anything covert or had any sort of deep connections. I was covering people in ink, which you're clearly a fan of yourself.
Oh yeah.
But it's an easy thing to do, isn't it? To call someone a shill or controlled opposition. And
Yeah,
the
a lot of
irony
that's
with
jealousy. You know what I mean? You got content creators that's been, grinding it out for 10, 12 years and not had no luck. And then here comes somebody that, gets some traction and actually has something of sustenance to say. And then it's easy for all the others just to say, oh, he's a shill. He's getting a check from, XYZ and all that kind of stuff. A lot of that's just,
mm,
content creator, jealousy type stuff. In my experience anyway, because I've experienced similar circumstances as you.
yeah, it is a shame because we should all be uniting, shouldn't we? Really, we're all
Yeah.
really trying to do the same thing, and if we work together, what could we achieve if we all stood
Mm.
together? But the shill thing's interesting because one of the original definitions of a shill is someone who pushes their own narrative and shuts other people down when they don't agree. So there's a sense of irony there because
That's what I was
I
about to
think
say.
we've really got to keep an open mind, haven't we? And I never expect anybody to believe everything I say. I'm just sharing information that I've found. And my hope is that people will take that and go on and have a look into it a little bit further.
Mm.
So with your
Yeah.
book, do you have a copy of your book to
Uh,
hand?
yeah. Yeah. This is my book. It's the Epic of Esau, the birthright and seed war. And I'm working on my second one now, and it's kind of more of on the subject matter that we're talking about today. But this is what got it started because this kind of got me into the Nephilim bloodlines, Genesis 6, and the serpent seed theory, from the garden.
Yeah.
And then it kind of stemmed into looking into these bloodlines in a secular viewpoint. So my second book, I'm about halfway through with it. I'm thinking about calling it the Tale of Two Trees. So looking at these bloodlines and what they believed, who they say they come from, and some of their occult ritual practices and stuff like that. So it's been a dark dive, but it's been very enlightening because it was my first exposure to some of this stuff. So it was really eye opening.
Do you find sometimes that the majority of your life is spent in quite a dark place?
It can real quickly. Honestly, I just came back from a conference in Wildwood, Florida. The guys from Nephilim Death Squad, they put on a thing there and invited me. And we actually had like a little round table. We had a bunch of little podcaster round tables, but one of the guys was talking about some of the dark stuff that he, was looking into. And Raven, one of the hosts of the show, kind of looked over and he was like, "Man," he said, "I just got to say this." He said, "You're always looking into this dark stuff." He said, it's
Mm,
going to put you in a depression, a dark hole, man. You got to come out and get the light every once in a while, and all the stuff that we look at, it can be very dark, but I mean, I'm a firm believer in balance. So I try my best, with all things, doesn't matter, alcohol or good times, dark studies, whatever. And you can even have too much of a good thing. So I just try to take balance. And they kind of asked us, how do we stay sane looking at some of this dark stuff? And that's what I had said. I was like, I try my best to, remind myself after a week or so really diving into this stuff, I just put it away and I go outside, go for a hike or do something,
mm,
watch a football game, just something to, release and kind of, let that stuff out
yeah.
because it'll drive you insane.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I try to disconnect in the evening. I get to a certain point where I just think I've got to switch off now. And so I'll just put
Mm,
some comedy on. I'll find something on YouTube, bit of stand-up comedy. George Carlin's normally a go-to for me, but anything I can find where what I'm watching makes me laugh. And because I kind of think that if the last thing I did before I went to bed was smile or even just chuckle to myself, then
mhm,
that's a good place to be. I have I've read a lot over the years, and sometimes I'll read before I go to bed. And of course, some of the literature I'm looking at is normally because I'm researching something that is quite nefarious. And in those cases, the last thing I do before I go to bed, before I fall asleep, is read something quite shocking. And I don't think that that's healthy. We need some kind of detachment, don't we? And a detachment from reality, because what's going on in the world right now it's pretty concerning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's fun to just take those timeouts and just be, be a normie for a little while. Watch you a
Yeah.
football game or read you a fantasy book just to kind of decompress and get out of there, man. Because yeah, I totally agree. And I love. Would you say George Carl?
George Carlin. George
Yeah,
Carlin.
he's the guy that said it's they call it the American dream because you got to be asleep to believe it.
He's fantastic. Well, obviously he's no longer with us, but he was bang on the money from a very long time ago. Even his, some of his early material still resonates very strongly today.
Yeah, he was a good
So
balance. He dove deep into the conspiracies and dark stuff, but he made it funny and comical.
I think that's a real skill. My brother often says to me, "You spend most of your life looking into pretty grim things and exposing crimes, you know, acts against humanity, conspiracies, acts of conspiracy against humanity, trafficking of children, destruction, fire, flood, war, genocide. Um, you need something. You do need something that's a complete contrast from that. Otherwise, it is quite a depressing place to be. But I find myself now in situations where my wife will often kick me under the table when we're with friends because one of them will mention something, and it could just be this happened recently. Someone said that they'd been for a jab. And my mouth, I was trying not to, and I started to go. My wife just kicked me, and I thought, no, no. That I kind of got to the point where I've realised and accepted that you can't wake everybody up, and perhaps it isn't our job to do that. That we should just be there to share information with people when they're ready, rather than force it upon them.
Right. And the thing is too is like no one knows thy own heart's desire. You know what I mean? So it's like when you find something you're passionate about it's easy to kind of just vomit it on everybody all the time. So you
Mm,
gotta reel yourself back. It's like Thanksgiving and Christmas. You get together, it's like, honey, don't talk about nothing weird. Let's just have a nice
yeah.
family dinner. And I'm like, hey, has anybody heard of Genesis 6? There's fallen angels breeding with men and making hybrid races running around here.
I know exactly where you're coming from. It's difficult though, isn't it? Because you're passionate
Mhm.
about it, and someone will just say something, and there's this trigger. But sometimes you just got to bite your tongue. And I guess it's don't talk shop
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
if it's your job, we kind of do need time out from it. It's very easy, isn't it, with what we do, to live permanently within this community, where we're constantly talking to people that share similar points of view. We're sharing information with each other. We're sharing video links and so on. And I think you need to spend time at least a few hours a day detached from that and just doing things that don't matter,
Yeah.
that don't have
I
a
agree.
consequence to them. Well, I think it's probably time we delve into the subject for today,
Enough
the loyal
foreplay. Let's
and
go.
yeah, let's do it. Yeah. Yeah, so where would you like to begin? Where did your search start on your
Uh,
quest to
uh,
find this information?
yeah, honestly, it was studying for this book, the Epic of Esau. As I was reading through some of the extra biblical books and their legends and their lore and stuff like that, they just come right out and said that Esau was of the devil. He was of the serpent seed. That his guardian angel was Samael, and that he even had a serpent's branding on his body and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, whoa, I've never heard of that. What's up with that? So then I went back to Genesis and started looking over that. And what was funny, it's uh, call it the universe, call it the Holy Spirit. I mean, whatever you want to label it here. But it's funny how synchronicities and timing comes into play a lot of times when you're doing stuff like this. Because then I had this woman on my show. Her name was Dr. Joy Pugh, and she's a woman from South Georgia. So she's a Southern lady, and she's got the accent like me. So maybe having her on kind of made me listen to her better or accept her better because she kind of reminds you of your sweet Southern grandma. But she started talking, and she got into serpent seed. And I'd never, really dove into it, but I'd heard everybody badmouth it, and talk crap about it. So I just never looked into it. But man, she laid it out, dude, and I was like, "Oh, here we go. This is going to be a crazy conversation." But she laid it out perfect, man. And what she was basically saying was that what happened in the garden was an allegory for a sexual act. And so she
Right.
said, when you look at the tree, she said a tree is a phallic symbol anyway. She said she goes, and when you go to the Hebrew, it says that she partakes of this tree and she enjoys. And a lot of the English translations translate that to eats. But that same Hebrew word throughout the Old Testament many times is translated to enjoys. So she said, so Eve partook of this tree and she enjoyed. Then she went to her husband and he too enjoyed. And she said, and you got to look at the Old Testament. It was eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. She said all the cursings from God correlated to the crime, and you usually got the opposite, of what you were trying to get. And she used a great analogy. She said when we were children, we weren't supposed to have cookies before lunch. She said, but me and my sister would sometimes sneak off, she said, and steal some cookies when she wasn't looking. She said, but one day she come in and she caught us in the middle of the act eating the cookies. She said, you know what we did? She said, immediately we covered our mouths.
Right.
She said, because that's where the sin was. That's where the transgression was. That's what we were ashamed of and wanted to hide. She said, so when they partake of this tree and they enjoy, she said, when God shows up, what happens? They immediately covered their sexual reproductive organs.
Yes, of course.
And I was like, oh, I never thought of it like that, And then she said,
Yeah.
then look at the cursings. She said, all the cursings have to do with sexual reproduction. She said, I will put enmity between her seed and thy seed, talking to the serpent. So plainly saying that he's going to have a seed and that there would be war and enmity between the two. One would bruise one's head, one would bruise one's heel, and so on and so forth. She said, painful menstruations. She would get increased pain in her labor and childbearing. So all of it, was around that. And then to, I guess, like a cherry on top, she even went to the etymology of their names. And she said, if you look at the etymology, a lot of these names in the Bible, especially the Old Testament, she said they kind of describe the role of the person in the story. She said it's not their actual name. Nimrod, the rebel, because he was the rebel. And she said, so when you go to Cain, the root of his name in Hebrew comes out to the acquired, that he was the acquired one. And she's like, how was he acquired? She said, then when you go to Abel, she said, the root of his name means breath. She said, because he was in the similitude of his father, Adam, who was a lifeless being until the breath of God entered his body. And so when she laid all this stuff out, man, it's like, it blew my mind. And it made a lot of stuff, throughout the scripture kind of make more sense to me. And that's kind of how this all got started for me.
And from there, you've just gone deeper and deeper into this.
Yeah. That was the catalyst. And once I had done that, I finished this book up, and it was about a 15-chapter book, but I had one chapter just on serpent seed theory.
Right.
And so when I started looking this stuff, deeper, I wanted to see if I could find, some more secular type stuff, and see if they kind of rhyme and correlate with each other. And I had found Nicholas de Vere, his book, The Dragon Legacy and the Dragon Seed. And man, that was a great book. I think I've listened to that audio book at least twice and read it 2 or 3 times all the way through. It was so fascinating and eye-opening. And in that book, he just basically comes right out and says that, his family, the de Vere family, in which his ancestor was Edward de Vere, I think the second, and he was like the top man in Queen Elizabeth's court, that they are part of this royal bloodline, this dragon court, and that they claim their lineage all the way back to the Anunnaki and Cain. They say that, Cain was the firstborn son. The birthright should have been his, but he was screwed out of it. He had the divine right to rule. And then you go to the Anunnaki, they said that they were bred as a subhuman race. And he says that, I mean, right out, word for word, they were bred as a subhuman race with higher intelligence to rule over the sheeple. And he talks about this bloodline, this family, and how they, traveled. You can see, stamps of their footprint throughout the world and the things they did. And it was just crazy, eye-opening. Then you get into the rituals, and it was definitely the start of a rabbit hole that branched out like a spider web.
So where are you with the Anunnaki? Do you believe that they were the creators of us?
No, I see. We all have our, preconceived notions. We all have our biases, and I'm a Christian, so I look through a lot of this stuff with, a Christian lens. But to my brothers and sisters, I'm the heretic Christian, so I'm isolated even in my faith. But when I read that, man, it rhymes too much with all the other stories of the world. And I'm this type of person. If I see the same story throughout the world by different cultures and different time frames and stuff, and they're all so similar, maybe just the names change, I'm like, there has to be something to that. And that's one of those things. When I look at that, to me, that screams Genesis 6. When the sons of, according to the Bible, it says this is the time when the sons of God came down and bred with the daughters of men and made a hybrid race, and they called them the Nephilim. So when I hear the story of the Anunnaki, that's like, okay, according to my faith, these guys were kicked out and sent to earth. And they, according to the book of Enoch, they gave them knowledge and wisdom and taught them all these things, and they were worshipped as gods. All that, rhymes with this Anunnaki story to me. And like I said, according to my timeline, they were kicked out. They were here first. So, of course, the Sumerian stories and stuff are going to be older than the Hebraic stories, because even our book tells us, if we believe it, they were kicked out. They were sent here first. So you're going to get their story first.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it repeats through, as you said, that story repeats through lots of different cultures and civilizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Native Americans called them the sky people.
Yes.
China, they called them the golden dragons. In Ireland, it was the Tuatha De Danann. And that's tied right into this bloodline. They claim that to be stemmed from them as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's all over the world.
So you've literally taken that bloodline, traced it all the way back to its source, and brought it right up to today.
Well, see, when I looked through that, I was looking through DeVere's stuff and kind of going on what he, said in his studies, and kind of compared it, to my lens and how it filtered through, my paradigm. And, but as far as like actually going through the bloodlines and following them all the way to modernity, I have not done that. But I know there's plenty of other people that have. So that's my kind of thought. It's like, well, that's a bridge that's already been built several times. And, if the time comes, I'll go and check it out for myself, but I don't need to build another one.
Yeah, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. So are there people throughout history, significant figures, not talking about right now, but in the past, are there significant figures that are part of that bloodline?
Oh, yeah. Like when you go through DeVere and some of his stuff that he talks about, he says that Dracula, as we know him, he was of this dragon court, and it's been, historically, recorded. And of course, when you go into modernity, what's his name? He's king now. Charles, he claims to be a descendant of Vlad
I'm
the
very
Impaler.
proud of it.
Yes. So, I mean, he's saying, I'm a member of this dragon court. I have the divine right to rule. And what's wild is like when you look at Vlad, and, he was, recorded as being of this dragon court, and he went to this Solomonics mystery school that was for this dragon court. Not everybody in the bloodline got chosen. Just because you're in the bloodline doesn't mean you're an automatic king or you get the initiations and all the knowledge. You have to be picked for that. But he was picked for that. And they said that once you go through that school and you graduate, basically, you have said to have ridden the dragon. So he, Vlad the Impaler, he rode the dragon, metaphorically speaking. So he was initiated in all these rites and rituals. And he said that he goes back to Melusine. He said as far back as they can look in their written history, the oral history goes back further, but as far as the written stuff, that Melusine was the first dragon princess to leave and come to Europe and kind of spread that influence and that bloodline, into Europe. And you have all those, legends and stories about her, that she lies in the middle of this maze. She's, for those that don't know, they depict her as like a mermaid kind of. So the bottom half of her is
Right.
like this serpentine, scaly, thing, and then this pretty woman up top, signaling the dragon court. She's of the dragon seed, but she's in the middle of this maze, and men have to try and find her. And so they go through the maze. Kind of goes back to Crete and the Minotaur, and all this kind of stuff. But once you made it to the center, there was a black cube stone, and water flowed from it. It said, as the waters of the abyss, flowed forth. And when you
black cubed stone.
Yeah, in the center of this maze that Melusine, was in the center of and kind of guarded, and they called it the waters of life. But they said if you did make,
sorry, Doc.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Doc. Just when you said black cube, I instantly started thinking of Satan, Saturn. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so they said that once you made it to the center, if you did, that her embrace, and a lot of times, that's sexual references, from her embrace, could kill you or enlighten you, resurrect you. And so what DeVere argued with her was that was an allegory, that when you went to her, you become initiated and you were selected. And so therefore you die metaphorically, and then you are reborn, resurrected as something new, kind of like the whole Phoenix thing. And he even calls back to the Lord of the Rings. He said that Tolkien, all that stuff he talks about is about this bloodline, this family. He said the elven race, they're the fairy folk. He said they're the pale-skinned, red-haired, green-eyed people. And then their cousins are the blonde-haired, blue-eyed people. And that the ring to rule them all, he said, was the Ouroboros. And that's the serpent eating its own tail. And so they say that by a serpent eating its own tail, consuming itself, evolves like a phoenix into a dragon. And the whole metaphor with the living waters and the maze, Melusine, and all that goes back to what they called imperial vampirism. And so what he said was, you hear about vampires and werewolves and things like that. He said in modernity, we hear that and we laugh, or think it's ridiculous because of Hollywood and novels and things like that. He said, but Hollywood just grabbed this thing and spun it plumb out of proportion. He said, so these kings, with the divine right to rule of the dragon court, he said they were pale skinned. Like I'd said earlier, they were the fairy folk, and they practiced ancestor worship. He said, so they had these tombs that they would go into, he said, to commune with their dead ancestors in the other world. And sometimes they wouldn't hear from them directly. And they would even ask for possession sometimes, kind of like the Viking berserkers traditions. And he said, so sometimes they might have to be in there for a week. He said, coming in and out, to eat and everything else, but they would sleep in these tombs until they got what they were looking for and initiated that contact. And he said, and they drank blood. He said it was known. Everybody knew it, and it was okay back then. He said, but when like the Roman Catholic Church took over, they demonized it and wanted to get rid of all these kings and stuff from this bloodline and put in like their puppet kings, basically. So they demonized them. So they said, oh, they're the undead. They're pale skinned and they come out of the graves. So they're the undead. And all the people that are dying and missing, it's because of these guys. We already know they drink blood. And that's how the whole vampire thing got started, was through that. And then the werewolf, because the same kind of thing, but the full moon associated with it, because it goes back to this ritual that I'm about to bomb you with. And it comes down to the woman's menstrual flow. So the blood they would drink, they would take girls from the age of 13 to, 19 or 20 when the hormones are at their highest. And she had to be a virgin, and she had to be of the family bloodline. She had to be of the dragon court. And they called these girls the dragon princesses, or later known as the Grail maidens. So when their menstrual flow would come, they would get down there and they would drink the vaginal secretions and menstrual flow of these girls, and they said it superpowered them, that they already had, bigger brains because they were created to rule, and that their pineal glands were a lot larger, and this alchemical concoction here would superpower them. And it was heavily dosed with pheromones and all this kind of stuff, but the main thing was melatonin, and that it would attach
Right.
to that pineal gland and give them the power of foresight, made them sharper thinkers and all this kind of stuff. So it kind of, supplicated and made them, supercharged or superpowered. And that's what the whole Melusine thing is. You go to the maze, you find her. If she selects you for the divine right to rule, that's kind of like your christening. You would partake of her flow, and then you would die and resurrect something more evolved. A serpent eating itself, consuming its own bloodline, becomes a dragon.
Wow. That's blown my mind. So do
Yeah.
you think that practice still goes on today?
I have spoken, since I've been talking about this, I've had some people reach out and email me, and they've actually sent me pictures of them, with DeVere. And so they let me know they wouldn't just BSing. And they've told me quite a bit of stuff. And I've actually been talking to one. He's actually said that he'd be willing to come on the show, but of course he wants me to make him anonymous, black out his face and distort his voice and stuff. But he would talk about this stuff. But he said, they want to tell you that we don't. He said, but we do. He said, it's not as effective as it was. He said, because even DeVere talks about in his book, that, of course, the interbreeding, that's how they kept the bloodline pure. And of course, you have, inbred, genetic malfunctions that happen in these cases. But he argued that, I think it was Cambridge University did like a study and said that you could interbreed for, I think, like 10 generations or more before any kind of defects happen. And that when that would happen, they would just have to bring in a new bloodline to kind of dilute it a little bit, but that way they could go back to keep doing what they're doing. They would skip a generation or whatever. But he said that where it got so diluted that it didn't give them the kick that it used to give. So it was just so watered down that he said that during the late Middle Ages, that the alchemists and stuff maybe come up with some kind of concoction, but it turned out like into powder, and they started using that, instead of the blood. That's what he argued.
So do you think that is the reason why they bring in, like, let's say, for example, Diana,
Yes.
Princess Diana, so and Kate Middleton and so on, they're bringing in other bloodlines that may well be distantly related, but not closely enough. Because as you said, the problem with inbreeding for too many generations was abundantly clear with the Habsburgs. And also Queen Victoria. There was a problem there as well. I think one of her children actually died. I think they had a high risk of haemophilia, and they were carrying that. Um, I think the most notorious modern day case of inbreeding is the Colt family. I believe they're in New Zealand, and that got so to such an extent where one of the children's father, grandfather, and great grandfather was exactly the same person. And that's worth Kimberly Colt, I think, is the most inbred person alive today, and that's a rabbit hole for people to explore if they're interested in that kind of thing. But it still goes on. People just assume that that movies like The Hills Have Eyes, don't they? A Wrong Turn,
The
but
wrong
this is
turn.
going on. Yeah, yeah, it goes on, and we've seen it, haven't we, through royal families in lots of cases over the years.
Oh
This.
yeah, 100%.
So what you're saying basically is, because they've diluted this to such an extent that it's no longer as effective.
Yeah, correct.
So what do they do about that? I mean, do they take more of it? Is there something else they're doing as well? Because obviously, and I saw it pop up in the comments earlier on about achrome. I don't think we're allowed to say the full word on
Yes.
here, but do
He
you think
talks
that
about
that
that in
has?
his book. And he
Right.
said
So there is a
he refutes
correlation.
it. He refutes it
Oh,
because
does
he says
he?
that, yeah, he says that, he said, you see all these witches, and covens, and people say they're wizards and all this kind of stuff. He said, us of the Dragon Court, he said, laugh at those people. He said, because we know they're full of it. He said, if they experience something, he said, it could be explained by science. He said, because he said, the power is in the blood. And that's even a biblical theme. It tells you, do not drink the blood because these kings and were doing it. These people were doing it. Well, why else would they come up with this, rule, law, regulation? But he says, no longer, shall you drink the blood. The power, the life force is in the blood. So they were telling them not to drink it. But he said that all these people are basically just posers. And he said that they could have the perfect ingredients, the perfect grimoires, and do everything to the T. He said they're not going to get the effect because the power's in the blood. They're not of that bloodline. And he said that and people want to talk about the achrome. He said, how ridiculous. He said, we take this as a supplement, he said, to enhance our abilities. He said, we get all these good hormones, all these good, the melatonin, all this kind of stuff. He said, and that's what the Catholic Church tried to demonize this family, this bloodline. They're saying, that they drink blood. All the people that's disappearing and dying, they're taking them, killing them, torturing them, and drinking their blood. He said, that's disgusting. He said, it would be repulsive to us. He said, because he said, think about it. He said, when you're torturing someone or you scare them, he said, they're releasing all kinds of chemicals, that are terrible. He said, even like meat and cattle and stuff. He said, when you murder a cow or whatever, he said, you want to do a one-shot surprise because they'll release all that cortisol. It'll harden the meat and, and stiffen up
Of
the muscles.
course.
And he said, so if you've done that, he said, number one, you're not getting the chemicals that you want because they're not of the bloodline. So they don't have the chemicals that you need. He said, so therefore you're already in the hole. He said, so then you go and you torture this person, kill this person and drink their blood. He said, you're just drinking all their stress hormones. He said, it'd be like drinking poison to us. He said, no, he said, it has to be of this bloodline. He said, it has to be given willingly out of love. He said that's where the magic is, and all the chemicals.
That certainly makes a lot more sense. But he's not disputing the fact that people are taking
People
achrome.
are doing it. And that's a thing he talks about, even the Vikings and some of these other warlords that you hear about them, drinking the blood of their enemies and fallen foes for power, and all this kind of stuff. He said, it all come from us. He said, and it just got perverted. They seen us doing it and
Right.
seen the claims we made. They didn't understand it fully. So then they just started doing it,
So do you think that this practice is still going on today within, the royal family?
Well, when I read that, I was like, okay, yeah, for sure. With all the, interbreeding and things like that, that bloodline's been so diluted that it don't do what it used to do. It's kind of like having a bottle of liquor
Yeah.
and you drink half of it and then you fill the rest of it up with water, you know? So I was like, okay, maybe what he's saying is true. Maybe they did come up with some kind of pharmaceutical, alchemical way to do the same thing. But like I said, when I'd spoken with these individuals that, are registered members of this Dragon Court and knew Nicholas DeVere, they said that DeVere told quite a bit. He said, but he didn't lay all the cards on the table. He said, you have to be
Right.
initiated and to ride the dragon. He said, we have ridden the dragon. He said, those practices have not stopped.
So the British monarchy right now are still practicing that, as far as you're aware.
From what he said, yeah. I mean, and two, like when you look back through history, and I'll give a shout out to Dr. Heather Lynn, because this is where I heard that. She really looks into the Anunnaki and things like that. So I had her on the show not too long ago, and we talked and we kind of exchanged information on some stuff. But she was talking about Francis I over in Europe, that he kept a bag of powdered mummy and would consume it. And then she also mentioned Charles II, that he kept a jar constantly of this stuff that he called the King's Drops, and it was crushed skull mixed with wine, and that he would drink that, and that he thought it was so powerful and potent or whatever that it's even recorded that they were still giving him the King's Drops on his deathbed.
That's incredible. isn't it?
Yeah.
And that kind of instantly, when you mentioned the crushed skull, that reminded me of rhino horn. And the
Mm-hmm.
belief, that what they're prepared to do to a rhino because of a
Mm-hmm.
misguided belief that there is something potentially substantial, substantially beneficial, at least within taking it. It's incredible, isn't it, to believe that people actually do think that. But it's in,
Mm-hmm.
I suppose it's passed down through generation to generation and becomes a practice that's, I suppose, almost symbolic, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Stops
100%.
having the effectiveness, but it's still something that's practiced as part of a tradition.
Yeah,
So,
ritual.
so where do we go with the bloodline families with this? Where do they break away from here?
Well, he talked about, he mentioned several different families, but, of course, you had the De Veres, you had the
Mm,
Merovingians, um, King Sigismund in 1600. He's the one that kind of reestablished the Dragon Court. But he even argues that Sigismund and some of the others purposefully manipulated their bloodlines to connect themselves to Melusine and some of these other people when they really wasn't. So he calls them out kind of, as fakes. Uh, but one story I thought was really fascinating was like with Queen Elizabeth. They said
right.
that she was a puppet queen, and that
Is
he
this the
said that
first or the second? Sorry,
yeah,
Doc.
yeah,
Queen
the
Elizabeth
first
the
one,
First. Yeah.
yeah. And so that's the one that had the all the magicians and stuff in her court,
John
right?
Dee. Yeah.
Yeah, John Dee and
Mm,
Edward the Second, Edward de Vere
mm.
the Second was in there, and they even said that he was ranked higher than John Dee. That basically Edward de Vere was Elizabeth's right hand man. She went to him for everything, and the reason why was because he said that the church come up with this fake document, and it's been proven a fake now. The donation of Constantine. And basically what they claimed was is that on Constantine's deathbed, that he wrote out this last will and testament. And he was basically saying, I don't want to keep tradition anymore. I don't want to pass the kingship to my son or my family and keep it that way. I want to give all the power to the Roman Catholic Church. They'll have all the power, the final say on everything. They'll be the ones that crown kings and dethrone kings. And they used that to basically get rid of this bloodline, this ruling class, according to De Vere. And he talks about, everybody talks about the Jewish Holocaust. He said nobody talks about the Elven Holocaust. He
Right.
said my people was hunted down and murdered. He said and run out. He said, and that's where you get the story of St. Patrick going to Ireland and running out the serpents. He said they're talking about us. They killed us and run us out, genocided us. And so he said, and what they done, they used that donation of Constantine along with the propagation of the vampires. They're killing the people. They're evil. That way, when they threw them out, the people were behind them. And he said that they installed tinker kings. They were puppet kings and queens.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were merchant class. So they only cared about money, and profit and raping the land, and all that kind of stuff. He said, so that's why the world is in such shape that it is in today, because it's all run by tinker kings. And Elizabeth was one of these examples. But I think the way he kind of put it together is that Elizabeth knew that Edward was of the royal line, that he should have been the next king. He's the one with the divine right to rule. He's the one with all the knowledge and influence. So she took him on as a right-hand man. That way she could have him there at her disposal, and also the support,
Right.
because, if I got him right next to me, he's not going to rebel and try to overthrow me or whatever else. But they talk about, and it's recorded, they had like these coronation ceremonies, and they said that, they had the traditional one or whatever. He said, but the ancient one, he said, that went back, to archaic times. It was a dragon court practice. He said to be king, you had to subdue nature and chaos. And it said that basically you become king of the wood, is what they called it. And that the king, or the one that wanted to be king, had to go out into the wilderness during rut season. So when male and female deer are, breeding, and that's when the males are most aggressive. They fight all the time, and because they're fighting over the resources and the women. So the soon to be king or whatever had to go out during rut and find a large stag and jump on it, take it to the ground and kill it himself. And so he killed the king of the wood. So therefore now he is the king of the wood and he has the divine right to rule. So during Elizabeth's ceremony, it's historically recorded. They're doing her coronation and everything else. But then Devere comes up and has a deer by the horns and takes it in front of everybody and slits its throat and kind of just throws it down. And they're like, oh, it was kind of like a ritualistic thing, or whatever. It was part of the show. But Devere was like, no, he said, that was my ancestors' way of sticking the middle finger in her face, saying, no, I'm the one with the divine right to rule, and everybody knows it, and I just proved it. So it's kind of like a in your face kind of thing.
I wonder if that's in any way connected to a practice that the British monarchy still follow, and that is when they come of age, the boys, they go out on the hunts. They kill a stag and then they castrate it. I wonder
I
if
bet it
that's
is.
because that still happens. They still do that. They castrate it and keep that as a kind of a souvenir. But I don't know what happens to it after that point. If it is just kept somewhere or something else happens to it, if it's ingested in any way, I don't know.
That's what I was about to say. Fried up.
Yeah, it bears a striking resemblance, doesn't it, to a much older
Mm-hmm.
tradition. And I
Yeah.
wonder if that is connected to it somehow, because it is a stag. And I remember reading about Prince Harry, having to do that. So there must be some kind of correlation there between those two things. Surely it's happening within the same, essentially, as far as we're aware, it's happening within the same ruling monarchy, the same bloodline, loosely speaking. So there
Yeah,
must
we have a
be a
tendency of
possible.
repeating them, keep doing them, but after a time, the meaning of them is lost and people just continue to do stuff
Yes.
like that because it's a ritual. They're like, oh, we don't know
Mm,
why we do it, but we've done it forever. So we just keep doing it. I found that out studying for this book when I was studying the Nephilimic bloodlines and stuff, and Esau uh, intermarried into Nephilim giant clans. When you look through the genealogies and seen the two wives he took, the Canaanite wives, when you go through the genealogies, they were giant clans. And it said his father was Seir, and the root of that means hairy. So you have this hairy, quote unquote, man marrying into these Nephilimic bloodlines that are known to be hairy, and they interbred and created this race of people known as the Amalekites, whose name means the blood lickers. So it shows you right there they were drinking the blood, right? But when you go up, I kind of traced their migration patterns as they were going north, and they ended up going
right.
to Sardinia, I believe, because when you look at some of their practices during the winter solstice, and they still do this today, and when they ask them, they don't know why they do it. They're like, oh, it's archaic. I mean, hell, we've done it as long as I can remember, so we just keep doing it. But the men on the winter solstice cover themselves in goat's fur from head to toe, and they carve wooden masks and put on their face. And it says they put like hundreds of copper bells on their shoulders and back, and that they dance through the street and they chase the women. And even Isaiah, the book Isaiah talks about, no longer will you sacrifice to hairy goat demons to whom your ancestors whored, and talks about the satyrs, the wild men will
Yeah.
dance in the deserts and desolate cities. So, I mean, it's kind of echoes of that to me. So, I mean, I think what you said with the whole hunting party, that's another thing that it's archaic. It may have lost its meaning and gotten watered down, but
Mm.
they still do it.
And Sardinia has lots of links to giants, doesn't it? I think they've
Mm-hmm.
made quite a few discoveries there, so that
Yeah.
ties in too. That actually
Mm-hmm.
ties in. Do you think
And
that we
even they
still?
done the ancestor worship there too. When I talked with Timothy Alberino, he actually went there and done like a documentary and stuff. But he said that it's in their culture, in their legends, it's been preserved. That when the children would come of age, they would build this big bonfire, and as a rite of passage, the children had to pass through the fire, just like in the Levant, the children
Right.
had to pass through the fires of Molech. And then as a final thing, they would send them into the giants' tombs, and they would have to sit there and try to make contact with their dead ancestor spirits and ask their spirits to embody them and strengthen them and give them knowledge and things like that. So once again, it's another echo of this practice of the dragon court. That's what they did.
Yeah, it's just repeating itself over and over and over, isn't it? Are there any
Mm-hmm.
other areas that this went into, not just Sardinia, but have you managed to trace it elsewhere?
Oh yeah, and that's interesting too. Was when DeVere talked about it, he said that basically they stemmed from the Black Caucasus region. And when you go there, I mean, you have all the stories, you know, of I'm trying to think of her name now. The 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 priestess up there, real famous. It's on the tip of my tongue. I think it starts with an M. But either way, she was, you know, famous and historically documented as this witch. And you find all these elongated skulls around this Black Caucasus region. That's where you have the story of Prometheus, the divine rebel that came down and gave knowledge to humanity and was, you know, persecuted and chained to the mountain for it. He said that's kind of where it all began. And that's something that really stood out to me because I love like the elongated skulls and stuff. Like I got
Yes.
two replicas over here.
Oh, have
Uh,
you?
yeah, I won't just tease you. I'll show you.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, please show us. Oh, wow. So why is one covered in signatures? Whose signatures are they?
Yeah, this is my oldest one that I've had. I call him Ed the Head. Anytime I go to conferences, all my, you know, really fringy giant hunters and fringy people that I enjoy, I have them sign it. So I've had, I'm thinking Dr. Heather Lynn sign this thing. I've had, trying to think now, the George Tsoukalos from Ancient Aliens, he signed it. Timothy Alberino, you know, so all these kinds of stuff. But those skulls, you find them everywhere. And some of them has been proven, you know, to be from head binding. But they have found that there's quite a few that are clearly not from head binding. I actually just recently did a show. It was live with Mondo Gonzalez. He was one of the archaeologists that went down to Peru, Paracas, and studied these things,
I'm
held
so
them and
glad you
measured
said
them.
Peru. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're on display,
And
aren't they? They've got them on display
yeah,
in Peru. Yeah.
yeah. And he said, and some of them are obvious from head binding. He said, but then you got to ask, why? Why would they do this and put themselves through this pain and their children and do this thing? It's kind of like the mullet. I jokingly say, the mullet was gone. Nobody was doing that hairstyle anymore. But then here comes Morgan Wallen, you know, that famous country singer, and he had the mullet and he made it popular again. Everybody started getting their hair cut like a mullet to emulate this person they held in such high regard. So that's what was happening with the head binding, I believe, because the ones they were trying to emulate were their priest kings, their god kings. And according to the stories, and like we've been talking about, this was a hybrid race, just like Genesis 6, just like the Native Americans and the Star People, just like the South Americans with the Veracocha. I mean, it's everywhere. So they made this hybrid race, and they said they had extreme intelligence, right? So they had bigger heads. And some of the ones they tested, man, that were not from head binding, had like 20% brain case volume increased. So all the ones they head binded didn't increase the volume of the brain. And then like this one here, it has no Sadra Sutra line. All the people that's had their heads binded, they still keep that Sadra Sutra line. And then if you look at the eyes, like look at, you know, next to mine, this is 30% larger than the average person's eyes. So they had bigger eyes. This is genetic, that all the head binding did not change the size of the eyes. And then finally, right here, this, they call this the foramen magnum. It's where the spine connects to the skull. So every case, whether it's a regular human head or a head binded human head, that hole is here. It's dead center for balance. But this head, all that weight in the back, what's going to happen? He's going to be looking up at the sky all the time. So this one, look, it's pushed all the way to the back where it starts to curve for counterbalance. That way it could look upright. So and all these things show you it's genetic. They were born with it.
So this is a completely different species.
Yes, just like the Anunnaki said, and Dever, they were a subhuman race with the divine right to rule. And the Bible talks about, these were seraphimic, serpentine type beings. And some of the oldest, terracotta statues and stuff they find in Sumeria is these serpent looking men and women, these elongated heads, and they're holding
Yeah.
a little elongated head baby, breastfeeding. All the pharaohs with their hats, what's under that big elongated hat? Their elongated head. Nefertiti is depicted without that hat, with this elongated head. And like I
Yes.
said, you find these everywhere, but specifically in that Black Caucasus region. And you find them in China with red hair. You find them in Paracas, Peru, with red hair. And what's Dever saying? They come from the Anunnaki, subhuman race, extreme intelligence. They were smarter than everybody, had the divine right to rule, and they were red-haired and blue-eyed and green-eyed. And
So do
you see these elongated skulls everywhere.
So do you think then that the Anunnaki were red-headed?
I think so. I think that they were red-haired and green and blue-eyed. And even Dever talks about, because in the Bible, a lot of them are described as red-haired, and they're described as, in some English translations, as ruddy. But that means red. Esau, the first one, came out red, covered in hair from head to toe like a hairy cloak. All this kind of stuff, it's all connected with that. And you find it in the mummies. They're so well preserved, especially in Paracas. It's so dry. So here they come out, these bright ginger hair that's not indigenous to that people group.
I'm just seeing a connection there, just in my mind, with the Rh negative blood group.
Mm-hmm.
Because quite often that we see within that blood group a high level of red-headed, blonde-haired, blue-eyed. And could that possibly be in some way connected to that bloodline?
It is, and he says that they're cousins, basically. He said or Germany talked about the Uberman, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed race. He said that they are the Dragon Court family, but they're like their cousins. He said, and just like any family, you have special traits. He said, so the actual Dragon Court bloodline were the ones with the supreme intelligence, and gift of prophecy and foresight, that kind of thing. He said, he argues in his book that the blonde-haired, blue-eyed races are cousins, members of this family, but it's a different branch. He said, and that's the warrior class. He said, that's the ones you hear about that, go out and conquer and overthrow, governments and things like that. But he said that when they traveled, basically that where they were so smart, they found these other people groups, in Turkey, in the Middle East, Israel, all these different places. And these people groups were hunter-gatherers and farmers. But they were getting constantly raided and robbed from their neighbors. So they would do all this work. Come harvest time, these warriors would just come in and kill them all and rob them. So here comes the Dragon Court, this bloodline, this family, the Anunnaki in some texts. And they were smart. They had agriculture. They knew how to make hoes and plows and do all these things to help these people, but they didn't know how to farm. So he said they worked out this deal with these people and said, hey, we're really smart people. We make good decisions. Here's our other family members, the blonde-haired ones. They are great supreme warriors. We'll come here and culturize you people. We'll show you how to do everything and help you rule, make smart decisions, and put stuff back for next year in case of drought. And we will protect you. No more will you have to toil in vain and your neighbors steal your stuff. We'll take care of each other. And he said that's kind of a deal that they had worked out with the people.
And do you think that happened in numerous locations across the world? Because that story does seem to repeat, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Of this help coming, to guide us in the right direction, show us agriculture and
it shows you the shift between matriarchal, and patriarchal. Because back then the women were the ones in power. These dragon princesses, they are the ones that gave their bodily fluids, that basically Christing them, the Christos, the christening, they selected the next kings. So it was a matriarchal society back then. And it kind of shows you that shift. And I can't remember where, but it was somewhere in the Black Caucasus Mountains areas. He talks about it and actually puts a picture of it in his book. they found a old stone tablet like in a burial chamber underneath a female's head. So this was like a dragon princess, or something like that, or a priestess queen or whatever. But on it, that tablet, they found ancient script, and they carbon dated it. It's even older than the tablets of the Sumerians by like
Is it
1,000
really?
years.
Oh,
But he
wow.
puts them side by side. They're almost identical. There's just a little difference, but it shows you this is the original, more ancient one in the Caucasus Mountains. And so therefore, when you find it down here, it shows you that they took it with them, and that's who these people are.
My word, I didn't know that. I was under
Yeah.
the impression that the Sumerian text was the oldest that we had.
Yeah.
So it predates that by about 1,000 years.
Mm.
Going back to the skull, a lot of people that are into the elongated skull kind of rabbit hole will instantly think of Jacob Rothschild. He's more often than not. I mean, I know allegedly he's no longer with us. He might be for whatever we really know. But we often see that, don't we? There'll be a picture of someone with an elongated skull or an elongated skull next to Rothschild. Do you think that he's carrying that?
It's quite possible. I mean, because they are still doing the divine right to rule, are they not? But it's just behind the scenes. They're not the puppet. They're not the kings or presidents of the country. No, they're the ones behind the scenes, putting their finger up their butts and telling them what to do, and sending out the money, making the decisions behind the scenes. So, I mean, I don't think it's very far-fetched at all. And you got to look at, too, genetics. I'm no expert on genetics, but I've read a little bit on it. What's that saying? I stayed at a Hotel 6 last night. I'm not a doctor. But so when you look at that, they talk about all of your, evolution or genetic modifications and things like that. They're all random coding. It's all random. They don't know. It's like the box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get. It's totally random, all the mutations. So I argued even in the book, kind of like Michael J. Fox. You remember that movie, Teen Wolf?
Yeah.
He started going through this transition. He started growing hair and stuff. He'd splash water on his face, and he never would, fully wolf out. But a full moon comes. He can't stop it. He turns into the wolf, and he locks himself in his bedroom, freaking out. Well, up comes his father. He's like, son, open the door. He's like, Father, yeah, Dad, you don't want to see me like this. He said, son, there's nothing you could do that I'd love you less. Open the door now. And he opened the door, and there's his father fully wolfed out. And he's like, oh, my God, you knew this whole time and you didn't tell me. And like you said, the movies, they kind of, tell us. And he says, son, sometimes this stuff skips generations. We were hoping that it just skipped you. So when you see these, genetic anomalies, like all of a sudden here comes a guy with kind of elongated head. Well, that's, in my opinion, because that's a random genome that was inserted in that bloodline, many centuries ago, and it just randomly manifests because once it got introduced, it's there. But of course, entropy comes into play. Nothing gets stronger over time. It kind of dilutes. And I think that's where you get the elongated skulls. That's where you get the stories of the wild men, with the hypertrichosis, born covered in hair, all these things that science tries to, demythologicalize, you know what I mean? So I think that's what those are. And we see all those anomalies. It's that random marker inserted into that ancient DNA manifesting randomly.
Who do you think out of all of the bloodline families is carrying the strongest DNA, if you like, the strongest strain? Who do you think that is from your research?
Just surface level, and going by, what's out there in the public domain, it would have to be Charles, because Charles talks about, stemming from Vlad the Impaler. Vlad the Impaler was known, historically documented, as being a member of this dragon court, and also went to the Solomonic mystery schools, and then they trace all the way back to the Anunnaki. So, at face value, if we take that, not with a grain of salt, but we put, some weight to that, they got a pretty good line there if it's not been manipulated, kind of like Sigismund. in the
Mm,
1600s when he reestablished the Dragon Court. Devere says that they manipulated their genealogies just so they could make that claim.
yes.
Maybe it could have happened there too. But the conspiracy person in me always wants to say they're not going to put their main guy front and center. They're not going to tell you everything. So to me, I'm like, he's probably the strongest connection publicly. But
Mm.
there's one more pure in the seat calling the shots, kind of like the Rothschilds and all these other kind of people. But they're behind the scenes pulling the strings. What I mean? Because they don't want to be out there in the limelight.
No, because that changes everything, doesn't it? And this
Yeah.
is something that I've spoken about before with the grey pope. You've got obviously the white pope that we all see. You've got the black pope, and then you've got the grey pope, Pepe Orsini. And if you go onto the internet to try and find anything about him, or even try and find images of him, there are only a couple circulating. So he's put himself in a position as someone who is ruling over the Vatican, where he can just wander around, and very few people will even notice him or recognize him. And I think that that's kind of hiding in plain sight, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And all
And
the
what about
dragon imagery, in the Vatican, but people don't,
yes,
they just kind of widely look at it. But man, if you zoom in and look at some of those crown moldings and the
mm,
paintings and stuff like that, there's dragon iconography all over that. And I think it's for a reason. And then you get into that
yeah,
main room where his throne or chair is, when you zoom back, you got the two windows that's shaped like eyes tilted down, that bridge coming down, and then it looks like a mouth open with the two columns coming down. It looks like fangs. I mean, it looks like the Pope is sitting in his chair right in the middle of the mouth of a huge serpent.
and haven't they got a telescope there? They've
Yes,
got
called Lucifer.
Lucifer, and isn't that the shape of the head of a serpent
Yeah,
that
it's
that's
very
in?
serpentine.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's
yeah.
like
So
in the Midwest out here in the United States, and then they kind of realized that was too on the nose, so then they nicknamed it Lucy.
oh, oh, okay. So do you think then at the level of the Vatican, not necessarily through Catholicism, but at the Vatican level, that they are following this, that this is part of really what's going on there, that they are worshipping the serpent?
I think so, but I think it's kind of like Freemasonry too. When
Mm,
everybody talks about Freemasonry, we're not, all the nefarious stuff we're talking about. We're not talking about the good old blue collar boys that go there to get away from the wife and have drinks with the boys. No, I mean that's the cover. You know what I mean? I use this analogy not to kind of tell my age, but the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies back in the day. If you remember the Foot Clan, they were in New York, right? And they wanted all the troublesome kids. So they made this place that they could go and drink and smoke and play video games just to attract, these kids. And then while they were there, the Foot Clan would evaluate them, see which
yeah,
ones they think held promise, and all this stuff. And they would just go up to a few. They have 100, 200, 300 kids there, but they only go up to 4 or 5. Like, hey, we think you got some potential. Come back here to the back room with us. And then they got told the truth. They got trained and got to see what they were really up to. So I think like the Freemasonry is like that, and all the other things. The Vatican, you have a cover to shade and distract people, but underneath is a few handful that really knows what's going on. And those
yeah.
people, I think, just to be cheeky and, I gotcha, little inside jokes, do things like that. They put that serpent imagery and those dragons inside the Vatican as little, esoteric, hey, we've infiltrated and we're the only ones that know. Look, we
Mm,
left our mark.
yeah, yeah, and they seem to enjoy doing that, don't they? Like you've
Mm-hmm.
quite rightly said, there's an awful lot of pleasure taken from that, because again, everything is hidden in plain sight, and you don't notice it until you know what to look for, and then once you do, you see it everywhere, absolutely
Yeah.
everywhere. This is something that I talk about, sort of digressing very quickly, with Tartaria when I talk about mud flood windows. Most people don't know, unless they've been down that particular rabbit hole. They don't know what a mud flood window is. They just think that it's a window that's letting light into a cellar or a basement. But once you explain how unlikely that is and how that couldn't possibly be the true purpose of them, they start seeing them everywhere they go. And I kind of think if you could go back right to the very beginning of your journey as a child, when you started going to church, when you went to school and you were starting to learn, with all of the knowledge you have now, how differently you would have perceived the world. And
Right.
imagine the debates that you would have had with, in church, in Sunday school, and in history lessons, and perhaps geography too, maths, and possibly English. The difference that your journey would have been with all of the knowledge we know now, and that's why sometimes I wonder whether or not we go to school at the wrong time.
Yeah.
We're too young to go.
Old
Maybe.
souls.
Yeah, because it's not until you're much older. You said something earlier on about reading and how you didn't really particularly enjoy it,
Hmm.
perhaps because, like you said, of what you were forced to read as a child.
Yeah.
But once you'd decided what interested you, what you'd found worked and captured your attention, all of a sudden reading becomes a passion and an
Yes,
enjoyment.
sir.
So I do believe education is wasted on the youth, that they're too young to appreciate the information being shared with them. And admittedly, a lot of the
Yeah.
information
It's
we're given
programming.
is wrong. It is programming, yes, and that's its sole purpose, isn't it? And for
Hmm.
us to just regurgitate. Because
Yes.
if you think about an exam, you're not being asked whether or not you understand. You're demonstrating your ability to retain
Yeah.
information and then
Memorization.
repeat it verbatim. So you don't even have to understand that subject. You just have to be able to retain the information. That's
Hmm.
it, isn't it? And
Yeah.
the better you are at regurgitating a narrative, the higher mark you get.
Oh yeah, and they tell you too. It's like we get what they call like imposter syndrome. If we like a
Yes.
certain subject and we look into it because we're passionate about it, we really enjoy it, but then we see somebody on YouTube or we see someone standing on a stage talking about the same subject, you're going to listen to them and hang on every word because they're the experts. They're the ones that's been platformed. They're the ones with all the viewership. They're the ones with on the stage and got the alphabet soup in front of their name. You know what I'm saying? Uh, and so you're like, I could never talk about my passions or stuff because this guy's done doing it. He's so much smarter than me. He's an expert. And then, you find out, and I've heard it said many times, to be an expert in anything, all you have to be is 10% smarter than the general population. So everybody gets this, mentality of like, oh, these guys are the experts. We can't challenge them or we can't read that book because he's already read it and this is what he said. But I can't tell you how many times, Guy, that I've listened to biblical scholars or historians or archaeologists or whatever that I highly respected that had so much, right in my eyes. But when I went back and reread the stuff they were talking about, I'm not no genius, but I'm like, dude, how did he miss this? How did he miss this connection? Or how did he get that wrong? He got all this other stuff right. How did he get that wrong? And I never would have found that if I didn't go seek it out on my own. And that's something that we need to do. We don't need to just rely on the experts and what they say, man, because they're human. They're going to miss stuff, and people have their biases, you know what I mean, and their agendas too. How easy would it be if everybody thought you was the expert or in XYZ and you wanted to nudge them to an ideology that you had that's not actually factual, but you believe it, but where you're the expert, you get to control where the herd goes.
Mm.
They'll just blindly go because they trust you.
And we see that happening all the time. Every day I see examples of that taking place. Um, I'm very careful, well, at least I hope I am, that I will give someone an opinion. I'll say, I believe this, or in my opinion,
Hmm.
or, you know, allegedly this took place. but you can't actually categorically say anything as being fact anymore, if you ever could to start with, of course. And now it's even harder because we're finding more and more evidence all the time, aren't we? More things are being exposed on a regular basis. But at the same time, we don't know if what we're seeing is real anymore. I'm at the stage where I don't watch the news, but if I was to put the news on, how do I even know if what I'm watching, if they're showing me a fire or a war or a conflict of some sort or a disaster taking place, how do I even know if what I'm seeing is actually happening?
Yeah.
And so to hang your coattail on the belief of one person that may be getting their information from somewhere that's perhaps misdirecting
Oh yeah,
is quite
Project Mockingbird. They
that's a
admitted.
bloody good example of that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But you tend to find that it takes someone very brave these days to question someone with a huge following. Certainly, if they interact. I mean, you could go on to, of course, Joe Rogan's latest podcast and put whatever you like there. They're not going to see it. No one's going to. It's very unlikely anyone's going to engage with it because he would get too many comments for anybody to do that. But with the smaller platforms, it takes someone quite brave to say, I disagree.
Hmm. Yeah, because it isolates you, and that's something that my old man used to say a lot. He was like, "Justin, there's a fine line between bravery and stupidity, but you have to be able to thread that needle, son. You need to have 1 foot in order, 1 foot in chaos to try to tread through."
Mm,
And
that's
that
a
was me,
yeah,
even when I wrote this book and I started talking about my research, and I knew, because I even started not to put that chapter in my book, guy, because I knew what it would do. I mean, I'm a Christian, but I'm telling you right now, the Christian, broad brush painting are the most evil, wicked, tear you down people in the world. And if you don't fall in line with the dogma that they've been taught for 20 years, whether it's true or not, they'll cut your throat, figuratively speaking, and just, you're dead to them and cut you off and persecute you. So I knew, I was like, dude, this is a hot topic. If I talk about this, man, I'm going to lose a lot of followers. People's going to isolate me. I'm not going to be
yeah.
able to go on certain shows anymore that I used to go on shows with because of this, stigma or whatever. But I'm like, man, to hell with that. I want truth. And the truth is not afraid of probing and questions and investigation. So
Mm.
therefore, I feel completely fine doing the things that I do. And when I find what I find, I'm going to share it. And to hell with what you think, because I'm doing this for me. And I like to share my information, and if you take it, great. If not, no skin off my back, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to continue to follow the breadcrumbs as long as they go. I don't care if it goes through a pond. I will learn to swim across and find the trail on the other side.
That's so admirable, and that's how it should be. Like you said, even if people don't agree with what you're saying and you get backlash from it, I think you've got to keep going on your journey and
Yeah,
not be guided by other people because it's very easy, as I was saying earlier on, just to believe somebody because they're popular, and that's where we've got to now, isn't it?
yeah,
I look at the World Economic Forum and the fact that Klaus Schwab and his friends are people that we're not particularly interested in listening to. We don't trust them, and they're not very interesting either. They're not exactly popular figures. If there was going to be a live show on tonight, or no, let's say, perhaps put this slightly differently. Let's say there was going to be an event in your town or city this evening, and Klaus was going to be there. The majority of the people turning up would be there to throw things at him or to
yeah,
heckle. But let's say, for example, you had someone like David Beckham. Now, David Beckham's going to be turning up somewhere. Now, there could be the same number of people that are prepared to throw things at him, but there'll also be a very large number of people going there because they actually admire and respect him.
yeah,
So pop him on the World Economic Forum stage, which they've recently done, and give him a knighthood. And God only knows what you have to do these days to actually get a knighthood. I imagine it's something pretty nefarious. Then you've got somebody that the public are going to listen to. And so I think that we are now in a position, it's been like this for a long time, but it's certainly getting worse, where you don't have to be right or wrong anymore to change the opinion of the public. You just have to be popular.
Or first, don't care about the facts. Just be the
Yes.
first one to talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yes. And then keep reminding people you were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, and I
Keep
think that's
reminding people.
another thing too with the pride of people, like,
Mm,
archaeologists and, these historians and stuff, like Clovis first, that was, held so strongly and then proven wrong, uh, evolution, Darwinism, all these different things. That one guy, Hawass or whatever he's named, he's the man in Egypt, he's the gatekeeper for all the knowledge in Egypt. All these guys, they build their lives on a subject, and they probably, honestly went on their journey to look for truth, and they found something, they come up with an idea, and they truly believed it. They wrote books and they become, the top dog. They got put on their pedestal. Everybody's looking up. And then here comes along someone else that takes a second look at their stuff, and then it reevaluates new information and comes up with a different opinion that is in contrast to the other one. Well, of course they're going to deny it and not accept it, because then it's not about truth anymore. It's about their status. It's about their pride, that they'll lose their throne. All their life's work will be washed away and for naught if they admit it. And I think that's why they double down. And even conspiracy theorists and like people like Graham Hancock, there's plenty of people that don't believe the current accepted narrative on many things, but they know better than to publicly speak about it, because they're not stupid. They know that they will lose their tenure. They will lose all their respect. All the books they've written will be just washed down the drain, and things like that. I can't tell you, which I won't tell you specifics, but I've had many big name pastors that's on, hundreds of thousands of followers on all the socials and things like that, that in private tell me that they believe in the serpent seed too. They think I'm onto something, that they think it's strange too, but they's like, but I know better. I can't talk about it publicly. I mean, it's
where do
just,
you stand with that? I mean, because you, like you just said, you're prepared to put your, put your money where your mouth is. You're prepared, no matter what the knock-on effect is, to speak the truth, speak what you believe. And how do you feel about when you're put in that position that someone says that they can't do it because of their situation, or perhaps their lifestyle that they
mm,
enjoy?
yeah,
How do you feel when you hear someone who's not prepared to do what you are?
it's a double edged sword, because I mean, I try to see both perspectives. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Me, it's like I want the truth, and everybody's a little different, but I've always been kind of headstrong, uh, and I've done stuff that I thought was right that ended up hurting me in some way, socially or financially or whatever else. So there's a part of me that when I hear that and see that gets mad. I'm like, you coward! You believe what I believe in private, but because of you're afraid of how you'll be perceived or chastised, or lose your position, or whatever else, uh, you just play the game. You put on this fake mask and just march right along to get along, while I'm, in my opinion, speaking truth, seeking truth, and telling people. But I'm being persecuted while you're getting to sit on the couch and have hundreds of thousands of followers and everything else, and putting on this big fake smile. But then on the other side, I look at it from their point of view too. It's like, personally, a lot of these people, I mean, they're good people. I mean, I like them, but it's like they got families. We all got bills to pay. And if you, like you said, kind of a lifestyle thing too, if you're doing this said thing and you're getting X amount of money, a month, you've built your lifestyle around that income.
Mm,
So therefore, if something happens and you lose that, you're upside down. So I mean, we're all human at the same time too. So, but I try to do that, look at both sides of it. But yeah, there's a big portion of me. It's just like,
mm.
come on, man, grow
Yeah,
some testicles.
because we did see that during the pandemic, didn't we? There must have been a number of people within the medical industry that knew that they shouldn't have been doing what they were doing, and that there was potential risks involved, and they carried on doing it. And there were some fantastic people that stood up for what they believed in. But I appreciate that this is taking it to an extreme level, but to administer something, knowing the risks involved with it, I mean, that takes something, doesn't it? The sort of person that's prepared to do that. But I guess with people that that are perhaps well respected historians.
Oh, we locked up. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in just a moment with a word from our sponsors. I don't know. Can you guys even hear me? Let me know in the chat. Or is it just me? Guys locked up for me.
Hey, Doc, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Looks like Guy's internet has frozen, perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
So let's just wait and see when he comes back on. I'm sure he'll be coming back on very soon. And in the meantime, how's things going on your channel?
It's going good, man. Having a good time talking about all this cool stuff that I enjoy talking about, and been getting some speaking gigs and stuff, and getting to travel to some conferences and speak and meet some new people. Man, I love it, man. I love what I do.
What interesting guests have you had on recently?
Recently, I had on Dr. Heather Lynn. I really enjoyed that one. She come on, and she's written a lot of books and studied a lot about the Anunnaki. So we really mashed well together. So I've studied the Dragon Court side. She studied the ancient history, mythology side. So we kind of had a big powwow there, man, and exchanged a lot of information. It was really enjoyable.
Looks like Guy's back now. Here he is.
Guy's back. Nice.
Yeah. Lost my power. I just had literally had a power cut, the electricity cut off. I thought I'd been kicked off. I've had that happen a few times where I've said certain things and I've lost my internet connection. But we actually just had a power cut, just for a split second. So apologies.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was me or you, but
no, it's definitely me. And I know that because my light went out above me, the lamp. Yeah, the lamp went out, and then literally back on in a second, but it takes a few moments to reboot. So apologies for that, and thanks, Sean, for jumping in there.
I was being cheeky. I was like, guys, we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
But I can see why historians are in a position where they perhaps know the truth, but don't want to actually, question the narrative or say anything, because they're going to lose funding, aren't they? They're going to have the fear of losing their funding, losing their position as well. And obviously, if you cast your mind back to what Graham Hancock went through, who you mentioned earlier on, when he first started talking about the Younger Dryas period, he was absolutely destroyed. There was the Guardian newspaper, and 5 minutes later he's on Joe Rogan, and then he's got a series, a second series on Netflix.
Yeah.
So, often
and that's
you think,
me. That's my mentality. It's like, man, there's so many of us. It's like, if all these people that, privately, believe these ulterior narratives, and things like that would come forward, man, 20 seconds of courage can change your life. So I guess I would hope for like a domino effect. It's like if one person stands up and they see, okay, well, I can too. And next thing you know, we all stand up, and that chessboard that's on our backs that the elites play on would fall and the game's over. But just so many people are comfortable being over.
Yeah, you're
literally
right.
and metaphorically.
Yes, you're absolutely right, because it's easier, isn't it? There's a saying: it's easier to believe it's easier to believe a comfortable lie than an uncomfortable truth.
Yeah,
and it's true, because once you start questioning these things, then there is, as we know, there's no stop, because it leads to other rabbit holes, and it becomes a warren, and then you don't believe anything anymore. Absolutely everything is up for question.
and that's something you got to worry about too, Guy. That's something I talk about a lot. It's like, now with the internet, sharing of ideas, and getting things out quick, You got the whole Project Mockingbird kind of going on. You got
Mm-hmm.
so much information coming, and how much of it is actually real? How much of it is disinformation to throw you off the trail? It's kind of like when you get in debates with people and they just start dropping, facts like crazy, rapid fire, and they hit you with 15, 20 different things. And of course, you can't go through and address all that stuff. And they do that on purpose. If they went one by one, you could go through and pick things apart and see what they are and hear the counter arguments. That'd be a different story. And at the same time, it turns us conspiracy theorists against each other, because they throw out so many different things. One person grabs onto this, one person grabs onto that. Next thing you know, they're fighting over what's right, tearing each other apart. Everything's fake and gay. The boogeyman is behind every single thing. A person can give an okay symbol. Oh, that's 666. He's part of the program, man. He's wearing orange. That's a Masonic color. It's like, come on, guys. I mean, the stuff we talk about is real and it's out there, but man, it's not everything, because you're too busy being distracted and fighting amongst yourselves, and that's what they want. That way they can do what they want.
Yeah. And it's divide and conquer, isn't it? They just split us into little groups where we can all hate each other, find something to hate each other for, and they can carry on doing what they're doing while we're squabbling amongst ourselves over things that don't really matter. It's funny because I'm often told that that this tattoo I've got here is a Masonic set, square, and compass. Well, it's not. I don't know how well you can see it.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
an anchor.
I thought it was a teardrop. I thought you killed somebody, guy.
No, I'll behave. No, it's an anchor. When I was, I suppose, at the height of my tattooing career, I tattooed my master, the person that taught me, and I tattooed a little love heart for them in exactly the same place. And it was a Saturday afternoon, and we'd shut, and we were having a few drinks. And so I did this little tattoo for her, and I liked it. I thought, that's really cool. I wouldn't mind something little. And we were looking at and talking about different designs that I could have. And she said, well, now you've got your TV show, because I'd just got the deal to be the resident expert on a program called Tattoo Disasters. It morphed into Tattoo Fixers. And it was with a girl that was on a TV show called Geordie Shore, which was quite a popular reality show here at the time. And she said, well, it's important to stay grounded. You got to stay grounded, remain anchored. I said, oh, anchored, yeah. And my I never met my dad's dad, but his stepfather brought him up and adopted him. And he was a commander in the British Royal Navy, and he was involved in the Normandy landings. And I've been to the plaque that he has, where it was all orchestrated from at Dover Castle in Kent and south coast of England. And I just had this sort of moment where I thought, a little anchor. So I gave her this design. It was about that big. And within moments, I looked in the mirror and it was 4 times the size. And obviously at the time it didn't matter. I'm a tattoo artist, nobody cared. But when I started doing this, and I'm appearing on different podcasts, I've had a few people say it was a teardrop. I thought, I've never been to prison. I certainly haven't killed anybody. Most people can see it's an anchor, but some people have said, oh, it's a set, square, and compass. And I was on one particular podcast, and somebody commented saying, why have you got a set, square, and compass there? Obviously most people know that I joined the Freemasons and I left. I've written about it in my books. I speak about it all the time. And I said, well, actually it's an anchor, and this is how it happened. No, it's not. Don't tell me what it is. Oh, wow. Isn't that funny that someone was correcting me on what I have tattooed on my own body? And I found that was really bizarre. And you sometimes find yourself in a situation where it doesn't really matter what you say. The other person's already decided that that they're right, and so you can't have a conversation or even a heated debate because it's closed. That avenue's shut. And so I've learned over the years to not engage and put my time and effort into people that want to listen or debate, but certainly don't shut you down. and have already decided that they're right before you've even opened your mouth, because that's not how we learn, is it? We learn by listening to other people's opinions and taking it on board. And even if we don't believe it, at no point do you necessarily have to be rude or shut somebody down. But we see it
No.
happen all the time. But
Abraham Lincoln, I think it was, he had a quote. He said, and don't, if I got the name wrong, forgive me, but it's somebody of importance said this quote, and it kind of stuck with me. I read it somewhere, but it said, be careful to not argue with a fool, because passerbys may not tell the difference, because you both look like fools yelling at each other in the streets, which, I tell people jokingly that the Lord ain't done with me yet. I mean, I do my best to try to ignore some of those things, but sometimes, dude, I get fired up and I get in there with them, If anything, I know it ain't going to change anything, but to me, I guess it's just a pressure release valve.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. It is difficult sometimes when you see certain comments. You just think, well, okay, I have to say something, but I try so hard not to. I just think that there are so many people out there that send messages and emails and really nice comments and also information. It could be challenging something that I've said or a guest has said, that's worth listening to, that I think justifies a response. Even if it's just someone saying, thank you, I enjoyed watching that or reading that.
Mm.
I think they deserve the time far more than somebody that's just, either decided they want to score points, or somebody who's just going out of their way to be unpleasant. I think there's enough of that going on in the world without actually participating in it. I'm going to have a little look in a few minutes. There was one quote, and I can't remember it brilliantly well, but it was something along the lines of, if you ever find yourself in a room where you appear to be the most intelligent person, leave.
Yep. I've heard Jordan Peterson say that. He said, if you're the
Is it?
smartest, most handsome, or whatever ist of your friend circle, then you need to get a new friend circle.
One thing that I wanted to, I'm going to sort of have a look through in a moment and see whether or not there are any questions in amongst this. So if anybody has got any questions, put a QQQ if you've got anything you want to ask Doc. The Illuminati. Now, obviously, part of the title of this is the Royal and Illuminati bloodlines. Where does the Illuminati fit into this? Do you think that is a society that started in 1776? Do you think it goes back further than that? And are we talking about the same bloodline?
To me, I think that you do see, hints of that with the Illuminati, especially once they were pushed, the bloodlines were pushed out of the royal ruling class. So then they, met in secret and, ended up making a good old boys club. I'm not saying everybody that's in on it is one, but I think there's some in there, because you see some footprints, some of the things that we've talked about today with the rituals and even the agendas, because this is their way of kind of fighting the system, right? Because the kings and queens, seeing these, conspiratorial groups, they were conspiring against the government and they were trying to shut them down. So it was to me, it looked an awful lot like these two, the Tinker Kings, the puppet kings that were put in place by the Roman Catholic Church, fighting against the dethroned bloodlines that were trying to usurp them from underneath and start like a rebellion type thing. I think I see a lot of that, and even some mixing in of bacon, because I didn't realize this till I started reading DeVere's stuff, but a lot of people theorize, that Bacon was the one that wrote all the Shakespeare stuff.
Yes.
Well, there's an alternative thought that Edward de Vere II that I talked about earlier was the one that wrote all of the Shakespeare stuff. So you have the whole Francis Bacon, Edward de Vere, Illuminati kind of web intertwining there.
I hadn't heard that. So that So, as far as you're concerned, and I do happen to believe this to be the case as well, do you think William Shakespeare was a fictitious character?
A lot of the evidence seems to point that way. And you got to think too, what we've been talking about today. People have ideas and thoughts, but they're afraid. They're afraid to get them out there because how they may be dethroned or, punished, socially and marked as the black sheep. So, what better way for you to express some ideas and put out some allegorical hidden nuggets for the initiated who have ridden the dragon than to come up with this fake name and use that to say the things that you're too afraid to say in real life,
There's I'm sure you've probably heard of it. There's a channel called the Y-Files. Have you
Yeah,
have
I've
seen that
caught
on
some
YouTube?
clips and stuff of it.
Yeah, I used to really enjoy it, but now he seems more intent. Well, there's a lot of promotion going on throughout it, and he does tend to try and debunk things. But what I noticed quite early on was that he uses his sidekick Hecklefish. Now, this is the animated goldfish in the bowl next to him.
Yeah.
Hecklefish appears to say all of the things that he wants to, but doesn't want to be seen saying himself. So he can use the fish to come out with something outlandish, and then he can look shocked by it or tell him that we can't go there. And I think that as much as I admire that, he's using it as a vehicle to avoid saying what he really thinks. So it's kind of clever, but at the same time, I think he should own it. If he does believe it. I'm just going to have a quick scroll down. Y-Files guy, yeah. I'm just going to scroll down here and see if we've got any questions. I'm asking people to put. Someone said, I think they're talking about the Wi-Fi's. He's a shill. It's difficult to know, isn't it? It might well be. Problem is, everybody's accused of being a shill.
Yeah.
Where do we go? Just trying to see if there are. If anyone's other connection. Here we go. There we go. It's a question for you from the Bandanarana. Are the connections to the Illuminati traceable through a maternal or paternal bloodline?
I've not looked into that. That's something I need to actually look at. I've not looked into it.
Here's a different one for you. This was from Jeff. What's your take on the agenda against the Confederate flag out with the obvious chorus?
The obvious chorus. As far as like the Confederate flag, I mean, of course, I'm a Southern man. It was probably around 2018 or something like that, 2016. The Proud Boys, went up north and protested and all that kind of stuff, and the whole Confederate flag stuff was all in the news and trying to take them down off of Capitol buildings and take down Confederate statues and monuments, and all that kind of stuff. Me personally, growing up in the South, you get stereotypes and people create narratives, just like we've talked about, the news, Project Mockingbird, they create narratives and the sheep will just blindly go with whatever they say because they trust them, not now, but back then especially. So, Southern people get painted as, really racist people. We're not, we're not like that at all. So I know a lot of people that have the Confederate flag in their yard or on their truck, and they're not racist at all. It's just to the Southern people. Of course, you got bad apples, and in every bundle. I'm painting with a broad brush here, but for the majority of the people, it's a heritage thing. It's it's like no, this is a heritage thing, and it's not our heritage of the slavery. No, it's the heritage of being rebels, having enough balls to stand up and give the man the middle finger, because we've lost our testicular fortitude now. If our founding fathers and ancestors seen how high we're taxed and how we're treated and how much freedoms we've lost, oh my God, they would lose their minds and be rolling over in their grave and calling us cowards. We don't deserve freedom. We're where we're at because we deserve to. We've let them do this thing. And a lot of people don't realize, I mean, I'm a big history nerd. I look into a lot of this stuff. It wasn't even about slavery. It was about the election, the electoral college. The southern states, not one southern state voted for Lincoln, but he still won. And it pissed them off. And they're like, oh, well, we don't even have a voice. Well, the hell with you then. We're going to do like we did with England. We're going to secede and we're going to make our own nation. That way we can have our elected officials that we want. And they were like, oh, no, you can't secede from the Union. And that's what got it all started. And the southern states were winning. It wasn't until 2 or 3 years into the fight that Lincoln started drumming up about slavery to try to rally the people and get more funding to turn the tide of the war. Because if you go back, Lincoln even, what's the word I'm looking for? Spoke on and proclaimed that he was not going to take the southern states' slaves away, that he didn't have the right to do that. And the people of the South could rest assured that they're going to get to keep their slaves and all this kind of stuff. So he didn't even care about slavery. It became about slavery because they were losing the war and losing funding and losing interest. So they drummed up this thing to try to rally the people and rally the big money makers to shell out some more money to help them win the war. So once again, so those statues and the flags and all that stuff was, it's about slavery, it's about racism. No, it ain't like that at all when you actually look.
Thank you for explaining that. Let's see if we've got any more before we go. This is a good one because I actually thought about this earlier on myself while you were talking about it. So this is from Katz. What do you make of the royals' coronation in Wales, Dragon and the Druids? Well, we saw that, didn't we? We saw Queen Elizabeth II. That's been quite well publicised, hasn't it? The Druid coronation. Any thoughts
and that's
on
what it's
that?
all connected. I mean, it's connected because he talks about when they went over there to the British Isles and Ireland and all that over there, the Tuatha De Danann, that was from this bloodline, and he said that they were actual kings, and they ruled over the people and all that kind of stuff. And when you go to looking through the Druids and their practices, they were the priest kings of the wood and all the kind of the practices they did. They talked about there was I can't remember, like a mound or mountain that they did their coronations at, basically. And they would all go there and meet, and they would do this ceremony, and then the dragon princess would give her blood in a cup to this guy, and that was the Christos, the christening. So once he drunk that, he was king of the wood. He had the divine right to rule. So that was that whole ceremony right there. And when you get into St. Patrick and the stories of him running the serpents out, when you actually read the history of that, I think the name of that hill or that mound was called Tor, I think. But in the St. Patrick's story, it says he goes on this certain mountain and lights this fire, and the kings get all upset, and you get this in this narrative of this story. But when you actually dig into that position, that place he went to, that high place and started that fire, was directly across the valley from that mound, that holy place where they did their coronations for their kings, that Tor mountain or mound. So, but during that time, they had some kind of ritual or holiday to where all the fires were put out. And the first fire of the day when the sun rose was lit on that Thor mountain or Thor mound. And then everyone else had the right to start their fires. So it's like a big middle finger. St. Patrick went on that hill or mountain across the valley and lit a huge fire first to kind of, rub it in their faces. So yeah, the whole Druids, the Tuatha De Danann, St. Patrick, all that stuff. That's what that is. That is this bloodline. That is the elven race, the fairy folk.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm just going to see if we've got any more questions.
Which I seen one I'd like to address. Guy, there's a guy I can't remember, but I seen it. He said, basically the Bible says that angels can't procreate. So how do I have my position? That verse he's talking about is always spun completely out of context. When Jesus is speaking to the people, they were asking, will I have my wife in heaven? Or, will I know my sister, or this kind of thing? And Jesus said to them, you would be like the angels of heaven. And angels, that means messenger. That's a job title. There's all kinds of heavenly beings, right? They're not all angels. That's a very gross misinterpretation that we have today. That means messenger. There's certain people that they have the job of being the messengers for God. When you read the Bible, even Satan, that's a job title. That's the adversary. So you have all these different positions. You got, Michael, the warrior king, you got all these different job titles. It's a kingdom, so when you read through that. So what he was saying is he said, the angels in heaven are not given unto marriage. So saying that, you guys will be like the angels, and the angels are not given into marriage in heaven. So when you read the Bible, Genesis 6, it doesn't say angels. Like I said, it's a job title. It says sons of God, B'nai Ha Elohim. So in the original languages, every time that phrase is used, it's talking about divine heavenly beings. And that's a blanket term. It could be any job title. It's just saying these are divine beings. They came down, they left and come down to earth. So therefore, yes, they did procreate because they wasn't in heaven. They left heaven. Jude tells you they traded their first estate. They shedded their okaterion, their heavenly body, for a fleshly body when they came. So, yeah, that they definitely interbred and made a hybrid race.
Yeah.
That Jesus wasn't, saying that Genesis 6 didn't happen the way we think it did. He was just saying that, no, when you're in heaven, it's a pure place, so therefore you're not given unto marriage. But they weren't there,
Yes.
so.
Yes, that makes sense. I'm just going to see if they're... I'm just seeing if there are any more. Can't see anything. Can you see anything, Doc? Anything else that's popped up?
No, we got like 800 people in here, man. This chat's going by like the Dow and NASDAQ. I can't keep up.
Got one more here, and before we sign off, thoughts on the Mary Magdalene bloodline?
And see, that's something too, is me, like I said, I have my biases. I try to be upfront with you, so I'm a Christian. So I don't believe in the bloodline of Jesus when you get into the whole, Da Vinci Code type stuff. But the De Veres and these people of the Dragon Court, they trace their lineage. They even say, they connect themselves to King David. And King David was, there in the Levant. So they even say that all that stuff is tied in. They claim that Christ, was of the dragon court. He was a dragon prince and king and all this kind of stuff. He was an enlightened one, and he was trying to show us, the way and stuff like that. Now, I don't agree with that, but that is a theology that they hold and claim. So they say that, when they left the Caucasus region, they went down to the Levant, and that's where you get the stories of the Anunnaki, and they taught them all these things. And so therefore they interbred with some of the people, and therefore that bloodline, come from David. But in a biblical sense, when we read that, they talk about two bloodlines. They talk about a serpent seed, and why else would they go through all the trouble of the genealogies tracking Jesus's bloodline, their Messiah? They done that because there was a bad line, obviously, and they wanted to separate themselves from that. I mean, if there wasn't two seed lines, if it wasn't a seed war over the birthright, that whole, genealogy would just be a total waste of time. Why did they do that? So I think in the Bible, they took the time to show, that Jesus, the Messiah, came through the pure bloodline, the untainted. He was not part of the dragon court. So that was the whole purpose of it.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that question. We're out of time now. What I would like to ask before we go is, where can we get your book?
Hey, man, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, the book, you can go to my website, PrometheusLensPodcast.com. You can get a signed copy directly from me. I have custom bookmarks and stickers and stuff that I give away for that. Or you can go to Amazon if you want to just give Jeff Bezos your money. But on there, you can find a physical copy. You can find a digital copy. And you can also get the Audible copy. And it's no AI stuff. It's me reading it to you. So if you like a good Southern twang, you can have me read it to you. But my only suggestion, I tell everybody, I've been told that I have a soothing voice. So just don't listen to me past 8 o'clock, because I'll put you to sleep.
Congratulations on doing your own audio book. I did try doing that myself, and I failed at the first hurdle. I just could not do it. I kept reading it thinking, well, maybe I could have used a different word there. And did I need a comma there? And maybe I should have added a comma. I couldn't do it. I just could not do it. So congratulations. That is not an easy task to do by any stretch. That's actually more painful than editing, I think, in my opinion.
Well, I killed two birds with one stone. When I was proofreading it, I had my mic hooked up and I was just reading it. And then when I seen something that was wrong or I needed to change, I'd pause, make the edit, and then pick up where I left off. And so I just started, I edited it as I went.
Oh, that's a very clever way of doing that. I didn't think of doing that myself. Well, thank you, Doc. Thanks for coming on. It's really good of you to give up so much of your time, and thanks for everybody that's watched this. And we look forward to chatting again soon in the future. And I shall be back on soon. I think my next live show is with David Icke, so I hope you'll be able to join us. And I'm guessing that in the description will be links to your channel, so people can jump on, and hopefully a link to your website as well. So just in case, just one last time, do you want to give everybody your website address?
Oh, well, God, thank you so much, man. I really enjoy talking with you and coming on and being able to nerd out and share some ideas and exchange some ideas together. So thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. But yeah, if you enjoy this kind of stuff, man, I talk about all this stuff. I talk about ancient lost civilizations, cryptids, Bigfoots, Bible stuff, all the cool subjects, man, that I find fascinating like this. But you can find those on my channel, Prometheus Lens Podcast. Anywhere you can consume content, all the social medias, and the website, once again, is PrometheusLensPodcast.com. That's a one-stop shop. You can find all my stuff there. Thank you, Guy.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thanks everyone for watching. Bye for now.
We